In broad daylight on the steps of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, Gene Deal found himself in a confrontation that could have changed everything. For years, he's been one of the few voices willing to challenge Diddy, exposing stories the music industry would rather keep hidden. But on this day in May 2025, Gene wasn't just a whistleblower, he was a target. With cameras rolling, a crowd gathered, and tensions high, a moment unfolded that showed just how dangerous it can be when someone dares to speak against one of the most powerful names in hip hop. It wasn't a private warning or an online debate. It was a public clash in the middle of a trial that already had the world watching. And what happened on those courthouse steps didn't just spark headlines, it raised a chilling question. How safe is Gene Deal, really, when the truth he carries puts him directly in harm's way? It was the middle of the day in May 2025, outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse. Diddy's trial had turned the block into a media circus, flashing cameras, reporters calling out questions, fans trying to catch a glimpse, and critics waiting to see the mogul face justice. The courthouse steps had become the center of the storm, with every move being recorded and broadcast instantly. Gene Deal wasn't there as a defendant or even a witness that day. He stood apart, carrying the weight of what he knew, decades of stories from inside Diddy's inner circle. For years, his voice had been one of the few calling out the darker truths behind the music empire, and that made his presence at the courthouse impossible to ignore. This wasn't just another day in court. For Gene, the moment was loaded with history. A man who had lived through the chaos of March 9th, 1997 in Los Angeles, when Biggie was killed, now standing in the middle of another historic showdown almost 3 decades later. And in that crowd, something was about to happen that would put Gene directly in the line of fire. As the courthouse crowd buzzed, Gene found himself face to face with a YouTuber known for stirring controversy, a man calling himself D Not. Cameras pointed in every direction, and the courthouse steps became a stage. The taunts started small, mocking Gene's past, questioning his credibility. But it didn't take long for the words to sharpen, each one meant to push Gene over the edge. In broad daylight, in front of reporters, fans, and strangers, Gene was being tested. At first, he tried to hold back, warning the agitator to keep his distance. But the tension snapped when the insults went too far. Eyewitnesses say Gene's patience broke. He swung at his heckler, a quick punch that sent shock through the crowd. In an instant, courthouse security and nearby officers rushed in, pulling the men apart before it spiraled further. For the onlookers, it was chaos. For Gene, it was something more, a reminder that speaking out doesn't just bring attention. It can bring confrontation right in the open with the whole world watching. And this wasn't just about one heckler, it was about what Gene represents, a whistleblower standing against one of the most powerful figures in music, with enemies and critics on every side. Within minutes, the altercation had spread across social media. Clips of Gene throwing a punch outside the Manhattan Federal Courthouse went viral, plastered across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The headlines came fast. Diddy's ex-bodyguard banned after courthouse clash. Security officials didn't take it lightly. Gene was told he couldn't return to the courthouse for several days, effectively silencing his presence at one of the most important trials in hip-hop history. For many, that ban raised eyebrows. Was it just punishment for a heated moment, or was it a way to push Gene further out of the spotlight? The public response was divided. Some viewers argued Gene had been provoked, cornered in front of cameras, and had no choice but to defend himself. Others insisted he crossed the line, giving critics exactly what they wanted, proof that he was unstable and unreliable. But one thing was clear. This wasn't just a courthouse scuffle. It was a public reminder of the pressure, hostility, and danger that follows anyone bold enough to challenge Diddy's empire. What about you? If you were in Gene's shoes that day, would you have reacted the same way or walked away? On the surface, it looked like a simple fight between two men. But the truth ran deeper. The courthouse steps in May 2025 became a symbol of what Gene Deal has been facing for years: the risks that come with being a whistleblower in an industry built on power, money, and silence. That confrontation wasn't just about one heckler pushing Gene's buttons, it revealed how exposed he really is. Unlike celebrities who walk with bodyguards and entourages, Gene stands largely on his own. And every time he steps into the public eye, especially at a high stakes trial, he opens himself up to being cornered, provoked, or worse. It's not the first time Gene's warnings about Diddy have brought danger. Just last year, in March 2024, federal agents raided Diddy's Miami and Los Angeles mansions, seizing evidence that shook the industry. Gene didn't stay quiet. He spoke out, giving interviews and doubling down on his claims about what really goes on behind the scenes. Each comment made him more visible and more of a target. So when that clash happened in New York, it wasn't just about tempers flaring. It was about the cost of speaking up and the reminder that some truths come with a heavy price. The altercation on the courthouse steps was dramatic, but it didn't happen in isolation. For Gene Deal, it was part of a much larger pattern, one that stretches back decades and shows just how dangerous his role as a whistleblower has become. Gene first stepped into the spotlight in 2019 when his raw interviews about the night of March 9th, 1997, the night Biggie was killed in Los Angeles, went viral. In those interviews, he painted a picture of chaos, betrayal, and unanswered questions. For fans, it felt like a missing puzzle piece. For the industry, it was a problem. From that moment on, Gene wasn't just an ex-bodyguard. He was a man carrying secrets that some people would prefer stayed buried. Then came his mysterious disappearance around 2021 and 2022. For nearly 2 years, Gene went quiet, dropping out of public view. Rumors swirled online. Some claimed he was silenced, others speculated he was laying low after receiving threats. The truth has never been fully explained, but his absence only fueled the mystique around his story. When he eventually re-emerged, fans wondered, had something happened behind the scenes to force him into hiding? By October 2024, Gene was back in the headlines after the FBI raids on Diddy's Miami and Los Angeles homes. Those raids exposed a level of scrutiny that Diddy had never faced before, and Gene didn't hold back his commentary. He spoke boldly about what might be uncovered, even suggesting that the raids validated years of rumors he had been talking about. In doing so, he once again put himself in the crosshairs, not only of Diddy's loyalists, but of an industry that doesn't reward truth-tellers. That's why the May 2025 courthouse incident in Manhattan mattered so much. It wasn't just a random clash, it was a boiling point. For the first time, the danger surrounding Gene wasn't hidden or whispered about. It was on display in broad daylight, with cameras rolling and security forced to intervene. And it proved that his decision to keep speaking out doesn't just stir conversation, it invites confrontation. Do you think Gene is courageous for continuing to speak despite these risks, or reckless for putting himself directly in harm's way? The courthouse confrontation in May 2025 was more than just a heated moment. It was a defining point in Gene Deal's life, one that would shift how people saw him and how he navigated his own safety and voice in the public eye. For decades, Gene had lived on the edge of hip-hop's most dangerous secrets. He had witnessed events like March 9th, 1997, the night Biggie was killed in Los Angeles, and had spent years carefully deciding what to say, when, and how. But nothing had prepared him for this kind of exposure in broad daylight. Standing on the steps of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, Surrounded by flashing cameras and a crowd of onlookers, Gene was suddenly put in a position where his words and his reactions could not be contained. The content creator known as D not pushed him, mocking his past, daring him to respond, and provoking a reaction in front of the entire world. It wasn't just verbal. The tension escalated to a physical confrontation, with Gene swinging in self-defense. Security intervened, the crowd gasped, and social media immediately erupted with clips, comments, and theories. What made this moment particularly dangerous wasn't just the punch, it was the context. Gene had already made powerful enemies by speaking out about Diddy, and his public persona as a whistleblower meant that anyone looking to intimidate or discredit him now had a clear target. Every eye on those courthouse steps was scrutinizing him, every camera recording his moves, and every action carrying consequences that could ripple far beyond that one encounter. This was the first time in years that the danger Gene had lived with behind the scenes became visible to the public. It wasn't an abstract risk anymore. It was real, immediate, and undeniable. The incident forced Gene to reckon with the reality that speaking the truth, even cautiously, comes with a price. It showed that exposure as a whistleblower isn't just about the words you say, it's about how those words put you in harm's way, in moments where anyone could push you to your limits. For Gene, that May afternoon was transformative. It changed how he viewed public appearances, how he engaged with critics, and perhaps even how he considered what to reveal next. The courthouse incident made it clear. Being a truth teller in the shadow of powerful figures is no longer just a moral choice. It's a strategic fight for survival, and it leaves one lingering question for everyone watching. Will Gene continue to confront the risks and speak out, or will this day mark the turning point where silence becomes the safer path? The courthouse confrontation in May 2025 marked a turning point in Gene Deal's life, one that highlighted just how dangerous it can be to challenge powerful figures in the music industry. What may have looked like a single heated moment on the courthouse steps was actually the culmination of decades of exposure, risk, and bravery. Gene had lived through some of the most tumultuous events in hip-hop history, including witnessing the tragic death of Biggie Smalls on March 9, 1997, and navigating the fallout of his viral interviews in 2019, which shed light on events that many preferred to keep hidden. His disappearance between 2021 and 2022 added to the mystery, with fans and commentators speculating whether he was being silenced, laying low, or facing threats behind the scenes. Then came the October 2024 FBI raids on Diddy's homes in Miami and Los Angeles, a legal storm that Gene commented on publicly, again putting him in the spotlight and under potential scrutiny. Every step of the way, his willingness to speak out carried real-world consequences. The confrontation on the Manhattan courthouse steps was a stark reminder of that reality. In broad daylight, surrounded by cameras and a crowd of onlookers, Gene Deal faced direct provocation from a content creator. The altercation, verbal, tense, and briefly physical, revealed just how exposed he was, even decades after leaving Diddy's inner circle. It wasn't merely a fight, it was a public demonstration of the risks associated with whistleblowing in an industry where silence is often demanded and defiance is noticed. This incident forced Gene to confront the reality of being a truth teller in a high-stakes environment. It likely changed how he approaches public appearances, whom he trusts, and how carefully he weighs every word he speaks. The courthouse steps were no longer just a stage for a trial. They became a battleground illustrating the thin line between courage and danger. And yet, even in the face of risk, Gene Deal's story continues to captivate fans and observers alike. His experiences underscore a powerful lesson. The pursuit of truth is never without peril, but it is the very act of speaking out that shapes legacies and challenges secrecy. So, we leave you with this. Will Gene Deal continue to stand firm, sharing what he knows despite the danger, or will moments like this push him further into silence? The answer remains uncertain, and that uncertainty is what keeps his story alive in the minds of those who follow it. What do you think? Was Gene's reaction that day a moment of self defense or a signal of the pressure he's under as a whistleblower? If you want to follow more stories like this and uncover the hidden truths behind hip hop's biggest figures, make sure to like this video and subscribe for the next deep dive.